Sometimes you see a headline and it feels minor at first glance, but when you slow down, take a breath, and connect the dots, you realize it actually says a whole lot about where this franchise is at. And to me, this whole Tim Hasselbeck flip on Shedeur Sanders fits exactly into that category. Because this isn't just about an ESPN analyst changing his take. Sure, that alone raises eyebrows. But what really matters is why he changed it and what that says about the QB situation in Cleveland. When someone who, not long ago, was basically saying Sanders wasn't a guy you build around, suddenly starts pointing to him as the Week 1 favorite, that ain't just an opinion. That's reading the room. That's understanding the vibe inside Berea. That's recognizing that right now, the natural direction of this team might be heading somewhere folks still don't want to say out loud. And I'll be real with you. Looking at this as a Browns fan, but also trying to stay objective, this ain't just about who's the most talented QB anymore. That conversation's over. Now it's about viability, trust, stability, direction. Because on paper, the most experienced name in that room is still Deshaun Watson. In theory, he's the guy. Most reps, biggest resume, biggest contract. But this is the NFL, not a spreadsheet. And if there's one thing Browns fans know, it's that a fat contract don't mean squat when the on-field product ain't there. Let's keep it real. Cleveland is walking into camp with an open QB battle. Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, and Deshaun Watson. And the fact that the head coach won't name a favorite? That matters. That ain't just coach speak. That's a message. Nobody's getting handed the job off their name. And that message hits even harder when the veteran QB is the one carrying the most baggage. Because Watson's situation has gone way past X's and O's. Yeah, the physical side is a big deal. 2 Achilles injuries is no joke, especially for a QB who already lacked rhythm and consistency. But it's more than that. It's the locker room. It's the optics. It's fan patience wearing thin. It's credibility, football, and beyond. And that's key. When Hasselbeck says he doesn't see Watson as a real contender and talks about damaged credibility, long absences, and everything surrounding him, he's not just talking ball. He's talking about a QB carrying weight on every level: physical, financial, political, symbolic. And that makes his situation damn near impossible. Think about it. If Watson were healthy, sharp, playing at a high level, and had the locker room behind him, he'd already be the guy, no question. But none of that seems to be true right now. So the Browns are staring at a simple question. Is it worth forcing something that hasn't worked and might be holding the offense back? That's the heart of it, and that's exactly why Shedeur Sanders is getting real traction. Not because he lit it up in 2025, let's not get carried away. The numbers weren't great. 7 TDs, 10 picks, 3-4 record as a starter, inconsistent play, some shaky decisions. If you just look at the stat sheet, you're not hyped. But football ain't played on Excel. Sanders stepped into a messy situation. Unstable offense, pressure, limited margin for error. And there's a huge difference between evaluating a finished product and evaluating a young QB thrown into chaos. Sometimes coaches aren't looking at the final stats. They're looking at flashes, timing on tight window throws, willingness to attack the middle command in the huddle, how he processes the game plan, how he responds after mistakes. Maybe they didn't see a polished starter, but clearly they saw enough to keep the door wide open. And in this Browns context, that's a big deal, because it feels like Cleveland is finally coming to terms with something they've avoided for way too long. The Watson project failed. Harsh? Maybe. But at this point, it's not a hot take. It's reality. They invested heavily, bet on a comeback, backed him publicly, took all the outside heat, reshaped the roster around him, and the return hasn't been anywhere near good enough. So, when ownership, Jimmy Haslam and company, talk about Watson still having a big chance, honestly, that sounds more like PR than football conviction. And I get it. No franchise steps up to a mic and says, "Yeah, we messed this up bad. That's not how it works. You protect the environment, keep things diplomatic, buy time. But there's a difference between what's said publicly and what's actually happening behind the scenes. And right now, the real movement tells a different story. When local reporters start hinting Sanders is the internal favorite, when national analysts notice Watson losing ground, when the competition is open despite a massive contract on the roster, that tells you everything. Nobody in that building is handing Watson the job. And that changes how you look at camp entirely. Because if it's truly open, Sanders doesn't need to be spectacular. He just needs to be functional, available, efficient. The guy who keeps the offense on schedule, and that matters. Fans love to ask, who has the highest ceiling? Coaches usually ask, who lets me run my offense? Who executes? Who avoids negative plays? Who keeps us in games? If Sanders checks those boxes, he's right there. Now, tactically, this is important too. If the new staff wants a more structured, system-driven offense, not backyard hero ball, the ideal QB isn't necessarily the most talented, it's the most coachable. And right now, that might be Sanders' biggest edge. A young QB, moldable, not tied to past expectations, more likely to buy into the system and play within structure. Watson, on the other hand, walks onto the field with pressure on every snap. Is this the one? Is he back? That mental weight shrinks your margin for error fast. You're not building something, you're trying to resurrect something. And in the NFL, resurrection projects usually don't end well. Now let's be clear. Does this mean Sanders is the long-term answer? Not so fast. There's a real risk here of fans confusing opportunity with certainty. He's got a shot? Absolutely. He deserves it? Given the situation, yeah. But he still needs to prove cleaner reads better ball security, third down consistency, ability to sustain drives for 4 quarters. That's what separates a guy who survives from a guy you actually build around. And the worst thing Cleveland could do right now is crown him early based on a few decent stretches. We've seen that movie before, Dog Pound, too many times. So yeah, be open to Sanders, but stay grounded. Looking ahead, there are 3 clear scenarios. Best case, Sanders wins the job outright on the field. No politics, no collapse from Watson, just solid play, command, and growth. That gives Cleveland a logical football direction for once. Middle, very Browns. Messy competition, mixed messaging, Watson getting reps because of status. Sanders, up and down, fan base split. Decision dragged out till the last second. Classic chaos. Worst case, they force Watson back in because of contract, ego, or sunk cost. That's how franchises spiral, stacking bad decisions on top of old ones. And as a Browns fan, we've seen that story before. Different faces, same script. That's why this news matters. Not because an analyst changed his mind, but because the entire environment around the Browns is shifting. It's getting harder to sell Watson as the answer, and more acceptable to view Sanders as a legit option. This ain't hype. It's logic, and for once, the logical move and the honest move might actually be the same. Is it early? Of course. Camp hasn't even fully played out. There's still time for everything to change. But right now, if I had to put money on it, I'm rolling with Shedeur Sanders as the Week 1 starter. Not because he's proven he's the guy, but because, given everything on the table, he's the option that makes the most sense for the team, the offense, and where this franchise needs to go. And that's really what it comes down to. The Browns don't need the prettiest story anymore. They just need the least wrong decision. Now, I want to hear from you. Dog pound or not? If the staff had total freedom, no contracts, no politics, who's your Week 1 QB in Cleveland? Sanders, Watson, or someone coming out of nowhere?